it's about voices. It's about perspectives. If we don't tear down the hegemony and lift up other voices, then what use is our storytelling? If our stories are not for different voices, by different voices, if we're just telling the same viewpoint again and again, what are we doing? What are we doing? What's the art we're making?
My name is Lisa Dawn Cave, and I'm a founder of Black Theater United. Welcome to Before the Curtain Rises, the Designer Series. Now let's welcome Daniel Brodie, projection designer.
Thanks. Hi.
Fantastic. So we're just going to have a conversation, and we're going to learn a little bit about projection design and how you started, what it takes, and all that kind of stuff, because some people don't even know what it is.
Sure.
So I'm going to start from, where are you from originally?
I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, originally. My parents were professional gamblers, actually.
All right.
So I moved around a lot, but originally from Las Vegas, although I feel like I'm a New Yorker now.
Right. And when did you come to New York?
20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2006.
Okay, great. Was projection design something you always wanted to do?
No, actually, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know it was a thing. I was in the directing track at my university. I went to Arizona State. And I was there for, first I was there for acting, and then I discovered I wasn't very tall. Okay. And so I switched to directing. Which I love very much. And I was always using a lot of media and computers and technology in my work. And I was adding technology to other people's shows, and I was adding video and computers, but I had no idea that it was a discipline. I didn't know it was a thing you could study. My idea of projection design was I show up one day in tech, I put on the video, I rig up some, Windows media player, rigged up hokey thing, and then you press go and it plays video, and that was it. And then I would leave. And once... what happened was Jake Pinholster, who is a media designer, and he was an associate designer on many big shows. He did the original Spamalot, and he did Wicked, and a few other shows. He gave his audition lecture for our class to become a professor. Okay. And it was in my avant-garde theater class. And he started speaking about projection design as a discipline and it being its own department and supported by the production. And it sort of clicked for me. Oh. I didn't know everything that went into it. And after I saw his lecture, I really felt like, that's a place for me. That's a really solid thing for me. And I started to be his assistant on a few shows, and I got introduced around and slowly started doing my own thing and being a bigger assistant, and then the associate job, and then as that happens. But mostly, and I think like many people who don't really think about it, I wasn't aware of its entire scope as a thing. Right. And now it's sort of the new thing. Yeah. That's actually incredible, because some of my questions led into, what was your journey? Sure. Did you even know it was something? Yeah. Because you're right. People don't know. People don't know. And what's interesting about that is that projection design in the use in theater is about as old as cinema is that projection design had been integrated into stage shows as early as like 1905 or something.
Oh, wow.
And that they were being experimented with and used throughout the first part of the 20th century. And it isn't until the 90s and the early 2000s when the technology gets cheap enough and accessible enough to integrate in a major way. But we see, productions like Tommy, the original Tommy from the 90s with Wendell Harrington, who did video and projection, and Batwin and Robin were involved in that production also. That's we consider an early use of the modern Broadway projection design.
Right.
But really, it has a history as old as film,
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, so now that I'm sure people don't know that it's actually a discipline that you can have a career in, can you tell us, actually, what is projection design?
Projection design is the term that United Scenic Artists use to call the role of somebody who adds film, video, media, any moving images, animation to a show. So that can be literal video that's played from something that plays video like a computer, or it can be film projection. Rent, which has that famous scene at the end where they show Mark's film and they project it on the back wall.
Right.
That's played from an actual 16 millimeter camera or projector. It's shot on a 16 millimeter camera, played on a 16 millimeter projector. It uses real film. There's no video involved. And so we have things like adding literal projections, and then we also have things like a big video wall or a bunch of TVs. Or you look at a design like American Idiot, which uses a full wall of projection and also many video screens within that. We might call that entire thing projection design, or we might call a show that has no projection at all, like the show we worked on, Bring It On, which had 4 video screens. We might call that projection design anyway. It's a blanket term which may or may not include actual projectors.
That's interesting, because now I'm going to go into what is the difference or the likeness or comparison of projection design and video design.
I think the terms are interchangeable at this point. I think that some people want to specify projection versus video, and they might have a reason about their own career or how they're viewed as an artist, which I think are fair terms. Personally, I don't tend to make a distinction. Recently, I worked on The Wiz, and originally I was titled projection designer, and as the show evolved and when we transferred to Broadway, the title got updated to projection and video designer because people thought that it might not have been clear that my responsibilities were not just the projections, but also the animation and the scenery that is digital. And so I think that there is some flexibility in those terms. But in general, I think projection designer, media designer, video designer, I think all of these are sort of interchangeable. And I tend to just use projection design for simplicity. Yeah. It's also, to me, that sounds the coolest.
There you go. Okay, you've named some shows. Can you name some other shows that you actually did some projection design?
I did. Currently running is Aladdin. I did the projection and media in that show. There's both video and projection in that show as well. I did Motown the Musical, which had a long run and then a tour. I did Jekyll and Hyde, the revival in 2012 or 13. I did a bunch of national tours like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, the anniversary tour, and I also did when Newsies went on tour and the digital capture, I took over that job from another designer. And And then I've done a lot of cruise ship shows and a lot of, the world's largest superhero show at sea, that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's actually good to hear because I also wanted to go into not just theater.
Sure.
Like, what other things have you done?
I do a lot of ballet. I've done several large-scale ballets with Christopher Wheeldon. I've been really fortunate to design his Cinderella in the Round, and I've done a fair amount of consulting on films for projection effects that get added into films. We still use a fair amount of rear projection and non-CGI practical effects, which are used with real on-set effects. I've done a fair amount of consulting on that. My job sometimes crosses over into film and print. I've designed some like fashion shows and that sort of thing. Mostly, I focus on theater, dance, opera, live performing arts. But I also have some work at music festivals, Bonnaroo, Outside Lands, some other live entertainment that might use video and background effects, that kind of thing. Although I tend to think of myself as a theater artist first. Okay. The job does expand.
You mentioned a couple of things, not to go into real intricate, because I think it'll be a class, a master class, but you mentioned back projection, front projection. Difference.
So rear projection is when
not back, rear projection, yes.
I knew what you meant. Rear projection is when the projection comes from behind and it has the advantage of there are no shadows and actors can't walk through the projector, whereas front projection means the projector is coming from the front and someone can walk through it. The big disadvantage to rear projection is just a practical sense, especially in New York theaters, Broadway theaters. There's no room. There's nowhere to literally put the projector. The houses are small and they are mostly historical landmarks. And you can't drill a hole in the back wall, for example. So you have to figure out where the projector goes in the front. And, sometimes you have to deal with people's, getting people running through the projections.
I was going to say that. I did, wasn't one of your shows, but I did a show, Woman in White.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And that was the biggest thing. It was constantly shaking.
Oh,
the projection just kept shaking.
Also because it's on the balcony rail and people are literally moving or walking.
And since the marquee is in a hotel. And they were having parties in the ballrooms.
Yes.
So we would hear the music and then we would see the projections just jumping. And we were like, oh no. Oh my.
We encountered a lot of that on The Wiz, which is also at the marquee. And the technology has gotten a little bit better since Women in White. It's a little more stable, but that is a problem, and that is that's just a concern, and is also sort of part of the liveness of theater. Right. Things move. Things happen in real time. You know,
true.
Sometimes there's a dance class, or there's an ambulance, or the theater happens during real life. We can't pause and take a new take. We stop if something dangerous is happening, but otherwise we just keep going.
There you go.
We got to hit our marks,
And actually I have one more question with video. And I'm doing this because of the shows that I've done or the experience that I've had, and I'm going to keep learning. Is there a certain thing called when you track a set piece?
Oh, sure. We would just call it tracking or scenery tracking, and there's a few ways to do it. There are some low-tech and high-tech ways to do it. I've done shows where we just have an operator and they're literally moving the thing to follow the person, the scenery moving. There are some clever ways to do it where the machines and computers that are controlling the moving scenery are sending the data to the
Okay.
projections. So we know, okay, as this castle wall moves across the room, it's moving at 3 feet per second. We can translate that into pixels on the computer, and it just moves. It just tracks it. There are also some more advanced techniques like infrared cameras where we're shooting infrared light on the object, and we're literally using the reflection in infrared with an infrared camera and using the projectors to map it that way. So as a thing is moving, we're actually using a real-time updating camera system to follow that. And that kind of system can be applied to anything. It can be applied to moving people. There are times where you track dancers. There are ways to track them using radio signals. There are ways to track them using infrared. There's a lot of different and really cool applications and combinations and cross paths of technology. And that's actually one of the major reasons I like the field, is that it's not stagnant. It is ever changing. It is, in my opinion, the most changing discipline. Is that the scenic design and lighting design, they have new technology and they have things that change. Of course they do. But projection and video, it's constantly evolving. The churn of the technology is so fast and so overwhelming. You look at a show like Wicked, which has been running years and years and years. Wicked had to update all their computers. They had to take everything out and add all new things because they stopped making the computer that ran the projections. So they had 10 of them, or they had 3 on the show, and one would break, and they'd swap one out, and they'd swap one out, and then there wasn't anywhere to get them anymore. So they had to change all the technology and update it, and that's really fascinating to me, because to me that is indicative of just the ever-changing nature of the thing. I'm constantly having to update my own education. I have to learn new technology and new software. And, when I first started, I was studying photography and I was using film cameras. And I remember that I was developing a piece in the dark room, literally with chemicals in a dark room to use in a show. And I remember the person running the darkroom at my university telling me that this was going to be the last season with actual film chemicals. And I was using that kind of technology in my work. And now you wouldn't do that unless it was something about like a time period or you wouldn't use that aesthetic unless it was something about the film. The filmness of it, you would use a computer, and that kind of thing, and it's changing. LED screens are changing. We're getting transparent screens. We're getting bendable screens. The projectors are getting brighter. The things are getting, everything is, is getting bigger.
Well, it sounds like a pretty cool discipline.
I love it. It's always different, and I think that's really an advantage for me.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm going to go into, any recognitions, any awards.
Sure. I was lucky. I received USITT's Rising Star Award many years ago when I was first starting out and becoming my own designer. And I think that's my major recognition. I'm not lucky enough to have yet been nominated for a Tony. Soon, I hope. There's no category for projection designers yet.
Exactly.
But we do sometimes, we sneak in with some of the other designers. Sometimes we can ride the coattails of scenic or lighting or sound occasionally.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that one too.
Okay, good. I have heard, and this is something that I really believe wholeheartedly because I love this business. And yes, the awards are good. Yes, the recognition is good and being up there and getting it and hopefully getting the next job from it. But I just love, and just from you talking, the whole journey that happens when you do a show.
Yeah.
and putting it together, where you start from, where you, in the middle of it, how things change, and then the final product. It's something about live theater that's just amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, of the things that I do, designing a large, messy, pull out your hair musical is my favorite.
Okay.
That's what I want to do. It's where I feel the happiest. It's the hardest job that I do, but it is by far the most rewarding.
Okay. Okay. We're going to go a little, not different, but another area. The reason that actually why we're here and why Black Theater United has really partnered with the many designers and all the disciplines is, what are your thoughts of why you feel that diversity and inclusion is important to basically our theater industry?
Well, theater is storytelling. At its heart, it's a story. And diversity and inclusion, it's about voices. It's about perspectives. And if we don't tear down the hegemony and lift up other voices, then what use is our storytelling? If our stories are not for different voices, by different voices, if we're just telling the same viewpoint again and again,
over.
What are we doing?
What are we doing?
What's the art we're making? Speaking of Bring It On, a line from that show that I always think about is, we have to work twice as hard to go half as far.
Yeah.
And I, as a white person experiencing from my point of view, that is something that just cracked through me, really just thinking about it from a perspective of things are stacked against you. And things are stacked against, and being able to shake that up and break that apart is what excites me about it, And what is interesting to me about partnering with BTU is doing that exact thing, is trying to, put cracks into the system.
Right. Yeah. Which went into, why do you want to be a part of this initiative? So there you go.
I mean, why I want to is that, I like the idea of breaking apart a system from the inside, I want to rearrange the pillars of society in a more equitable fashion. I think that's what people should do. I think that we should look at the systems of oppression that exist and do our best in the short lifetime we have to arrange it better for the future.
Right.
Because what else is there really? What, after all is said and done, and, after 20 productions of Aladdin or or whatever I've done, how can I help the next person? How can I help that?
Right.
And if I can do that in any small way, then I want to do that.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this initiative and you being a part of it, and the other designers that have jumped on board to even just do this docu-series. Is a huge step, and we're going to keep going and going and going to our next steps, and I think it's going to be really, really putting those cracks and opening it up, and it's going to be really exciting.
I hope so.
I really am.
Yeah.
I think so. Is there any particular thing that you're involved in, that you're doing, that is making space for people of color, or getting the word out about projection design to let people know that it's there, and how to get involved and how to research, I guess, the whole thing?
Well, I would say that Black Theater United is the first thing that I've done on a major organized step to do that. But I will say that I've always had an eye towards inclusion in my own studio and in my hiring practices. I hired Britney Bland for The Wiz, who's a young, Black, fabulous projection artist. And the interesting part about this, and Britney will back this up, is I interviewed her. Someone recommended her to me.
Right.
And I interviewed her on the phone. And because it was Wendell Harrington who recommended her, I knew I didn't need to follow up. I emailed Britney. We scheduled a phone call. We went through the interview. She sounded great. And afterwards, after the interview, I was like, oh, it's for the show The Wiz. Do you know what The Wiz is? And she laughed at me. Because as a young Black theater artist, of course she knows what The Wiz is. Later, when we met, she said, you know what I really appreciated is that you didn't know I was Black. And I was like, that is true, but how did you know that? She's like, because you wouldn't have asked me if I knew what The Wiz was. And I felt, it was an odd moment, but I felt proud of that moment because it had nothing to do with, some put on thing about, oh, I'm going to find a Black artist to work on the Black show. Right. It just was, she was a great artist who gave a phenomenal interview and she did a great job. And I am looking forward to working with her again on the tour. And everyone is systemically affected by racism and classism and all of the stuff that makes us do the things we do. And if I can try to accommodate in any way, that's what I want to try to do. And I feel like I have always tried to keep the door open. And my teams are always diverse. They're multi-gender and multi-sexuality and multi-race. And in any small part, as a single designer who hires 2 or 3 people a year, that's, I think that's the most that I can do. Right. And I'm hoping by doing things like this that I can help inch along the progress.
So how do people get started?
Well, I honestly think that this is an industry in which cold calling is the answer. I think that for me, I made a list of designers whose work I admired. And I literally went down the list, Googled each person, sent each person an email. I think everyone responded. A few of those people agreed to get a coffee with me. A few of those people agreed to take the next step and let me intern or assist on a show. I think that theater design specifically is hungry for talent. Everyone is looking for the next assistant, the next intern, the next somebody. I think that a lot of people have to understand that 99% of the job is getting the job and 99% of getting the job is showing up.
Right.
And that every year, every new show is always a scramble for who's going to do it.
Okay.
Who's going to get involved. And I think literally contacting people who work in the industry at their public-facing email address. I can't speak for everyone else in the industry, but I know that I am dying for those emails, that I always need new faces, and that there's me and a few other designers keep a Google sheet of assistants and of talent that are coming up. And, if someone emails and the time isn't right, we add them to the sheet and we say, try this person, see what they're up to. And I think a lot of it is showing up.
Right.
And I don't think you have to be in New York City to work in theater, but you have to you have to be putting yourself out there.
Right.
I think you have to be trying to get the job. You have to be making contact. Projection design specifically, but really all of the theatrical design disciplines are much more a independent contractor kind of job than they are I applied at this firm, I worked my way up, and now I'm this such and such designer. Those jobs exist, and there are big design firms that have that kind of thing. There's Disney Imagineering and et cetera, et cetera. But I think in general, it's an industry about people. It's about real human connection. And I think that literally for young designers or young theater artists who are interested in design, they need to reach out. They need to find us. Just say, please, let me get you a coffee. Can I please just ask you my question? I think most of us are just theater kids who grow up and are always interested in talking to the next generation, you know. I hope someday I am too busy and too important to take those phone calls, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I hope that I am dying for someone who's watching this to email me.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because you saying that, some of the other designers saying that, knowing that this initiative is out there, will actually, I don't like saying this, but give permission to people of color to actually do what you just said. Because now they know that you are going to answer the call. You are going to answer the email, and you're going to have coffee. Even if a job is not right there and then, they are now maybe on a list.
They're on the list, You
know, so just to hear that is a huge step forward.
Yeah, and I really do fundamentally believe it, because I know for myself and for several other designers my age and in my cohort, it's what we did, and it's what's worked. And not everyone gets a job, not everyone becomes a thing, not everyone it works out. But in order for it to work out, you have to get out there. And I think that it's a lot closer than people imagine. You know, I don't know what actors are going to do. I don't have any advice for someone like that. But for technicians and programmers and animators, illustrators, content creators, projection designers, people who have an artistic inclination and who are trying to get into the field, I think reach out. Reach out is the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Daniel, for taking us through your journey and the world of projection design.
Of course.
Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website at blacktheaterunited.com. Black Theater United, creating pipelines for you, the future of our industry.